jotted down these names, these words. Edgar Cayce, Nostradamus, global warming, Mayan prophecy, apocalypse, dates and times, December 21st, 2012, 11/11. And at the very end, my consciousness went dreaming. I talked about the heart. Pondering everything, your heart begins to swing back towards remembering who you are.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, the veil is being lifted, and supposedly the myths say that this happens every time, every 13,000 years. So this is the time when we learn everything. I don't know if it's a short time and then we start forgetting it again or whatever, but this is that time.
When the stars align and all of the sublime thoughts and subconsciousness become one mind, tap into the universal mind and see everything wide. It's bigger than you ever thought it could. Pondering everything your heart begins to swing back towards remembering who you are. And the sweat on your brow is rolling, exposing just where it is. We are right now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another broadcast from the Prophetico and the Bands of Time. Just give me a few moments here while I sort out a couple of odds and ends, and we'll get this thing rolling. We got you, Matthew?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And we've got lots to talk about tonight, Bri. We've got all kinds of things to talk about, but I think tonight we're just kind of kick back and do whatever rolls off the feet, I think. Because there's a lot going on behind the scenes as well that everybody needs to be aware of. All types of entertainment going on, vast distractions. Literally, the sheep being baited. But here on the Bands of Time, we're going to talk about some pretty serious things that nobody's putting two and two together with, Brian. Let's just do this right now. Let's just start out this way. Ladies and gentlemen, very serious things going on here. Let me do this. Oklahoma, now America's earthquake capital. Published January the 4th, 2016. Things are not normal. What caught my attention was exactly 3 days after this was released, ladies and gentlemen. This article, the first one, was released on WFMY News, Channel 2, Oklahoma. That Oklahoma was now America's earthquake capital. Like I said, that was on the 4th. Okay? That was on the 4th. 3 days later, we have this from Fox News. 4 quakes of magnitude 4.0 hit northwest Oklahoma. Ladies and gentlemen, things are not, I repeat, they're not normal at all. Brian, you said that you felt this earthquake as well too, didn't you?
Yeah, well, it's that's awesome. Oh boy.
What, you seen that?
Yeah, everybody does now.
I saw that 5 seconds
That's
ago.
good stuff, man. Well, I was sitting here, what was that? I think it was Friday morning, and basically taking a break, watching some television, and something's rattling and shaking, and I'm trying to rationalize it away, going, oh, it's got to be the cat above me on the couch. And he wasn't doing anything of that sort, and maybe my heart's beating a little fast. I just sat there and it kept going and going, and I'm going, I bet there's an earthquake somewhere. Got completely, just forgot about going to check for it because it hit me what was going on. Then I saw the post about the Oklahoma earthquakes that hit the other day with the a 5.0 or in that ballpark. And I went, let me type something in here quick and take a look. And sure enough, it was felt here in Wisconsin. It was felt several places throughout the Midwest. So, and this weather patterns that are going on all over the world at this stage. I mean, it's just been absolutely nuts throughout this week, at least here where I'm at locally. We've had the temperatures shooting up and down and up and down. And it's just been absolute and complete chaos. Even just, within the simplicity of the weather alone. There's been a bunch of stuff that, I mean, on my end, I sporadically am able to keep track of, various odds and ends with the news, but, I've been so in-depth historical research that I only have just really been catching, certain things that are coming in through, be it the social network, and I did not want to hit that button. And so on. I mean, it's just, there's so much happening at such an accelerated rate, and we've got so much, well, as I guess you said, but I kind of look at it one way. We've had a lot of high oddities and definitely some pretty deep deceptions that are really rolling along here in the background. But look, folks, I mean, everybody should not be surprised. We knew all this was going to happen. And I mean, if you want to be able to sit down and narrow in, recognizing any signs of the times, well, that should have been one of the big ones that caught everybody's attention quite some time back. But this is something that's not commonly spoken of, within the exception of, the circles that are watching all the false doctrines that are whipping in this, that way, and the other. But, how many teachings do you hear coming from the eschatology circles about all the things that are going to take place, throughout the churches? And I haven't really seen this as being a whole world thing. What I have seen is it's a Western pattern. But, nonetheless, enough about that. Not altogether an area I like spending too much time on. I mean, let's see here, there was an article that was released. Well, yeah, you got one right there, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to try to figure out how in the heck to get this up into a web page. No, that's really not what I wanted, but anyways, I'll work on that in the background, because I've got a couple of programs here. Windows 10 throws in all kinds of excess garbage, and there's some little money program that keeps track of these stories as well. This caught me right away, because this week I had Apocalypse When. I mean, it's kind of give the quote quick here: contagion, the spread of market changes or disturbances from one regional market to others. A lot of times I've had to inform my wife about these varied odds and ends that are happening. And yeah, I made mention of this the other day, and she's like, oh yeah, I caught that on the news. I'm like, okay, well, that's not normal. So they're even reporting it, like the local news here's about, 90% of the time what we'll have on, if anything. But every once in a while I'll pop up CNN International, because they're more or less run through a British outlet, and it's not too bad. I mean, sometimes they get in these analysts and then they just sit there and ramble for days on end, but some of the news reports I catch on there are actually pretty decent.
Yeah, well, this one right here caught my attention. Nothing's normal. 2016 is just getting off with a bang. Right, how we have Dow S&P off to worst 4-day January start ever. That's ever, Brian. Ever. You'll take note that here it says that oil prices at the time this was released was at 12-year lows. Of course, the 12 years caught my attention. But today, we had to go grocery shopping, of course, and it struck me very hard because I paid $1.86 for gasoline today, and that was the exact price that I filled my truck up the night before 9/11. I remember it quite distinctly, and I even wrote it down because I knew what would happen in the morning. So, and check this one out, Brian. Only one stock in the Dow 30 companies rose last week. Ladies and gentlemen, this is quite hard to believe. The only stock on the Dow to rise this week, Walmart, posted a 3.7 gain for the week. Off the charts, Brian. Off the charts. Nothing is normal for this year. Everything is being broken right out of the gates, almost like, we're at the horse races. When the gates fall, they come out of there like rockets. It just seems like, to me, the very first week of January has been one humdinger all the way across the board. Brian, this thing we've got going on with Oklahoma being the new earthquake capital of the United States, and they keep blaming it on fracking, of course. we have more fracking fields here than they do there. We don't have earthquakes here. It just amazes me that people can't put two and two together. They frack a whole lot more places than just in Oklahoma, ladies and gentlemen. There's no earthquakes here in the Bakken, but you can believe what you want to believe. Run with it. I mean, I'm fine with that, for you to run with it. It's just they do fracking in Texas. They do fracking in all kinds of places, but they have the public snowball, Brian. They want the public to think this is because of fracking, and that ties right in with the oil, and we need to shut the pumps off, and we need the price to get back to normal. We need this, we need that. When Saudi Arabia is clearly going against the grain, ladies and gentlemen, they refuse to reduce the flow of oil. They're just jacking up the gasoline prices. That's what they're doing. So we are into an ender's game here when the only stock on the Dow Jones to increase in a week is Walmart. We're in trouble.
Well, and I mean, this is where people need to understand what's been going on too, is the oil market itself has been absolutely flooded. Now, going back about 2 months ago, we had, quite clearly it was stated that Saudi Arabia was running into some major financial issues, and they were on the borderline of collapse at that stage. We watched this, I would say it was going, I think, the end of December into early January, and I kept continuing to check to see what was going on with the oil markets due to the fact that it's just being completely flooded. Now that the embargoes and import-export, all the various odds and ends have been lifted off of Iran, now Iran and the Persian Gulf major oil supply is coming in to this as well. United States just had an entire lift on the export of oil. Okay, now logically speaking, in historical times past, when the market begins to be flooded by a commodity, it drops the price. Okay, those sharp declines and drops in prices have major ramifications. And we've had, within the Islamic State situation on top of it, Saudi Arabia going back even, I don't remember if it was at the end of December or January, and a whole bunch of varied analysts went, whoa. Saudi Arabia, all of a sudden, brought their own group into the equation, and things just have escalated. There was a major, I want to say one of the major Islamic leaders in that area in Saudi Arabia was killed. Now there's massive tension going back and forth with Iran. Just give me a moment here. Now I have one story up that related to this here from RT. This is a little bit of one I've been keeping an eye on throughout the week as well here. Got all-out war with Iran won't happen, Saudi defense minister. Okay, that's not the same story there. And if you just kind of look through this article, an all-out war between Saudi Arabia and Tehran is something we do not foresee at all, the Saudi Deputy Crown Prince and Defense Minister has said. Speaking to The Economist, Mohammed bin Salman said whoever's pushing towards that is somebody who is not in their right mind, because a war between Saudi Arabia and Iran is the beginning of a major catastrophe in the region. And it will reflect very strongly on the rest of the world. For sure, we will not allow any such thing. And it goes in here, this is what I was bringing up before here. The two countries are balancing on the brink of a major conflict after Riyadh executed a prominent Shiite cleric, leading to an angry mob's assault on the Saudi consulate in Tehran. The Saudi defense minister strongly believes that Riyadh was acting within its rights and in accordance with due legal procedure when it executed Shiite cleric Sheikh Nimir al-Nimir on terrorism charges on January the 2nd. What has this to do with Iran? If this proves anything, it proves that Iran is keen on extending its influence over the countries of the region. He said, stressing that by pulling out its diplomats from Iran, Riyadh actually saved Tehran from undergoing embarrassment. In the case, the mob that attacked the Saudi embassy caused harm to diplomats and members of their families. Excuse me there. Folks, and we've been we've been trying to keep as close of an eye as we can on any of this as is here over the course of the last couple of months. We've tried to kind of point out everybody that we've got the whole world right now is focused on everything that's going on with the Islamic State, and rightly so. Do not get me wrong on that level. Nonetheless, what this has done at the same time is a lot of the world community is kind of looking the other way between these events that are developing between Iran. Now Saudi Arabia is obviously coming majorly into the forefront within this. They had basically, it was in the late part of last year, the nuclear treaties and so forth were signed into effect. And the leader of the UN or NATO, whichever one, had basically lifted the investigation into Iran attempting to procure nuclear weapons. They just completely wiped it off the table. Now, since that time, when these treaties have been, put into effect, they have been launching some pretty massive missiles. Even up into the last week, they just shot off another really high-tech missile. And there's a lot more here that is taking place as a whole in a bigger picture. We had the tangle that went down between Russia and Turkey that really began to bring to the forefront of everybody's attention the shenanigans that Turkey has been up to for quite some time. We've had the Kurdish folk have been sent in to take back bases within Iraq, and you've got the Turkish military shooting in over there and just completely obliterating them. At the same time, and Iraq is getting ticked off. They're saying, get out of our, get off our land. What are you doing here? I noticed another report earlier in this week. Once again, a great big slaughter happened with a huge amount of Kurds within the PKK faction. Things have boiled so completely out of control at this stage. It is to the point you just cannot, you can't look around and just not scratch your head. Here in America in the last week, we had in Oregon, we had another thing flare up with this, I guess it's a Bundy Rancher crisis and so forth, where pretty much this militia came in and took over this town and started basically seizing all the military bases, or not military bases, all the government facilities there, and I haven't kept too close of an eye on it, but nonetheless, that dangerous threat has been brewing here in the United States. It's been building for a very long time. In tandem with this, there's been major legislation that's been trying to be pushed through within the White House concerning the gun laws. That has been firing up a lot of people as well at the same time. We've got things that are so dangerous that are brewing here right on the soil in the United States. It is literally just insane. And, this is something I've stated time and time again, and most people just do not understand this. As far as the terror watch lists go in the United States, the groups that are on the forefront of those lists, outside obviously Islamic terror groups, are these homegrown militia, patriotic militias, and a lot of them are caught up within these varied crusader movements. And I maybe want to clarify just a little bit more deeper here on what it is when I'm talking about crusader. There's a lot of aspects where some of these things have been wrapped into many churches at this stage of the game, but it's the Dominionist movement itself that has really been drifting in to this very dangerous realm for a long time. And there's just a lot of stuff is flaring through this. There's a lot of people that I've seen that I thought had enough common sense to not get caught up in this patriotic stuff. I mean, I had somebody I know, I've known for a few years, just starts posting a bunch of this stuff, you know, and all this just, man, oh man, folks, we got stuff happening on the home soil everywhere across the world. And I personally can't even keep up with it. We're trying to stay on top of all the historical work we've got going here. You know, this week alone, you know, the buried brothers and sisters that we talked to with on the social network have all kind of blindsided me with just some amazing things that they stumbled on. And it's just a lot of stuff to try to keep up on doing both of these things here at once. So
it's kind of overwhelming, Brian. Everything that's going on. I want to talk about this a little bit, Bri. The tropical storm. This is from the Watchers. Of course, I'll flip over to screen share. This is from the Watchers site. Here we have it. The 2016 hurricane season seems to have arrived 5 months ahead of usual. The first tropical depression, 1C, developed in the central Pacific southwest of Hawaii on January 7, 2016, and strengthened into a tropical storm the next day. Tropical storm Pele is near island landmass, expected to weaken to a tropical depression by January 10th. Experts think the early tropical storm occurrence is related to strong El Nino weather events. So they're thinking that it's due to the abnormally warm ocean that we've had. And I like how they included this in here too, that it is the third system to develop in January in more than how many years? 40 years. I just loved how they put all kinds of little tidbits in here that me, of course, I always think biblically. And when I see this, 5 months, I'm immediately reminded of 150 days. The only problem with that, here, Revelation chapter 7, verse 24, and the water prevailed upon the earth 150 days. Problem is that 5 months on our calendar could never be exactly 150 days. There's no way, because we have, of course, variations in our month to month. You would never have that many months, 5 months in a row of exactly 30 days. And it makes you look deeper in this. We, of course, jump over to Luke chapter 1, verse 24. After these days, Elizabeth, his wife, became pregnant. She kept herself in seclusion for 5 months. You, of course, tie this directly to the book of Revelation, of course, with the unleashing of the horde from the abyss. They were not permitted to kill anyone, but to torment them for, that's right, 5 months. And it repeats itself, of course, in verse 10. Their power was in their tails, of course, to hurt men for 5 months. That's why we can prophetically see that's exactly during that duration there, when, of course, time is going to go topsy-turvy. And that's when all these events take place, lining right up with the book of Revelation, Brian. So, you know, when you put the Bible source code to task and you know to look for things like that, completely off the charts, just have tropical storms show up 5 months ahead. And then we take a peek at other news, and something really got attention. This was on the Mirror. Of course, village weather.
3,400-year-old fort in northern Israel will soon be in the basement of a high-rise apartment building.
Was I getting that audio from you, Bri?
I believe so, and I'm not even certain why that happened. I had that all turned off in the mixer. That's all right. I just muted the web page. It's supposed to be muted, but I guess apparently it decided it was going to play anyways. Now I'm just pulling some stuff up in the background, and one of these dumb web pages, as typical, starts playing random news stories.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, here. This made me look for other rain stuff. And a village where there's 75 days rain with dampened spirits, rotting sheep. Now, it hasn't stopped raining since October 26th last year in Britain's wettest village. This is amazing when you read through it. But get down here to the point that really come out. You'll take note what this farmer said. We've had rain of biblical proportions. Biblical proportions. It's poured down for almost 80 days and nights. So by that reckoning, we would need 2 arks. Did you catch that, ladies and gentlemen? It's grinding people down both physically and psychologically. Our sheep are pretty hardy animals, but even they are looking down in the month. Their fleeces are their fleeces are not getting the chance to dry out because of the endless rain. It's not stopped since October. I've never seen the ground as saturated as it is now. Fed up farmers have been forced to let their beet fodder crops rot in the ground because fields are so waterlogged. This is absolutely amazing what is going on. It's absolutely amazing. The deluge that's happening on parts of this planet. So it just tied right into that, Bri, and there was no way around it, Brian. He was forcing you, this farmer, to look at this biblically. He was forcing you to. Now, for a farmer to know his Bible well enough to know, to say that they would in fact need 2 arks is of serious significance for this to be published like it is on the mainstream media. Absolutely amazing, Brian. So all kinds of things, and then on top of that, we have all kinds of, like I said, distractions going on. More importantly, deceptions going on. You know, on the social networking site, I got a kick out of the simple fact that I found an article about the flat Earth again, Brian. This was in the mainstream news, put there right after, us having talked about it several times. But they're calling this some interesting things. Now, it mentions someone here that I am not at all familiar with, but I guess it's a pretty famous individual, and it refers to her flat Earth. I don't even want to call it a theory, but let's just call it psychosis. Okay, let's just look at this as a psychologist would. I think that's more important. But here is in the New York, of course, magazine, Inside Flat Earth, Tequila's new belief system, and the well, like I said, you really do need to look at this psychosis. Of course, they refer to it here using religious terms, but it is actually a psychosis.
Well, since you brought that up, quick get in there and show that Greek word, gyro. Let's just get this done and over with since it was brought up.
Okay, yeah, not a problem. Let me switch back over here. Let's see here. Give me a second, Brian. Here, I'll let him look at that. Give me a second. Let me bring it up. Why don't you fill in the blanks while I do that?
Well, it's gladly I will here because I wanted to talk about this anyways. I haven't even had a chance to bring it up. Now, we were talking last week, Matthew and I, privately, and I talked to my wife about this as well. We had on the news about 2 weeks ago. I was watching CNN International, and I heard them make a statement I have never once heard in my entire life, as they called the set of storms that was moving through as it was dumping snow and rain and everything else all over the United States. Worldwide, people everywhere were getting hit by some of the most unbelievable weather. On the CNN International story, the analyst, the reporter, whatever you may call her, she called it a global weather disaster. Now, I kind of stepped back and I went, what? I've never heard that term used before. Having a discussion with my wife about it after this happens, and I said, when have you ever heard of that ever happening before? And she said something that chilled me to the bone. Brought up the day after tomorrow, and I just went, you've got to be joking, because I have the original book, at least I think I still have it, I'm not certain, but nonetheless, I read the original book that was the science behind this event. And as you can see right here, I did a search real quick, and you're going to find a plethora of articles out there that have just been written within the last couple of months here. This one stretches back to October. Scientific analysis shows the day after tomorrow disaster could happen. Yeah. Scientific analysis from the University of Southampton shows climate change induced disasters similar to the storyline of the 2004 film The Day After Tomorrow could actually happen. Experts dismissed the Hollywood movie, which sees the whole world freeze over when it came out, as being implausible and scientifically inaccurate. Obviously, they didn't look at the book that was behind the movie. Sorry, I had to interject there. However, by using the German climate model ECHAM at the Max Planck Institute in Hamburg, Professor Sybren Driftot from Ocean and Earth Science at the University of Southampton came to the conclusion that if the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, a major current system in the Atlantic Ocean, collapses, as it did in the Jake Gyllenhaal film, coupled with global warming, then the Earth will cool for 20 years. Global warming would then continue as normal, with an offset of global temperature of 0.8 degrees Celsius. Now, quick to point this out here, most people do not understand this. When that term comes up with global warming, all right, everybody, you have to understand when these warming patterns happen. What transpires is it sends a massive amount of moisture up into the atmosphere, as we have, for instance, in the last couple of weeks here, we had reports that there was a quick thaw out of a bunch of the ice within the Arctic Circle, and then it turned right back around and froze again. Okay, when that happens, it puts moisture into the atmosphere. It turns around and in time has the opposite effect, where it brings on a massive freeze. So, you know, our typical understanding doesn't really normally recognize that that's how these ice ages are brought about, but it's this kind of climate shifts that cause these things. Now, they brought in here the continental rifts and so forth, basically the streams of water that move about through the continents. Now, these were discussions that I had back with a friend of mine, stretching back, oh, good grief, around even 2000, we were talking about this in depth quite a bit, about what's going to be happened at the moment that these rifts are disrupted, knowing full well that it would bring on this same atypical thing that they brought forward in the movie The Day After Tomorrow, which, mind you, and these guys just, like I said, they obviously didn't put two and two together, because the movie actually came about through a book that was published with all of the scientific research. That was at the heart of the movie. Now, if memory serves me correctly, it was Art Bell that was one of the authors that released this work. But, I mean, you've got, there's quite a bit more in here to this. Here's one of the first ones I brought. Now I'll go to the second one here. Once again, you have the same type of article here pointing this out. And what I like about this one right here is at the bottom. What climate impacts are happening now? Drought, heat waves, tropical storms and hurricanes, Arctic melting, wildfires, heavy precipitation. Now, throughout ancient history, when you have a pattern such as this happening, like it is, but this is in such an intensity, it's utterly, global weather disaster. Not a term you hear every day. In tandem, we have the refugee crisis that's taking place throughout the Middle East. Whenever you see these things happening hand in hand, every single time in history, when this combination happens, you are looking at mega collapse. It is a repeated pattern that has happened continually. And, this is a constant. You have wars that have pushed migrations to move throughout varied regions. At the same time, these were also brought on by the fact that there was massive climate changes being either caused by A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or whatever it may have been. You always have the cause and effect. One thing leads to another. We are seeing this massive same pattern happening on an unprecedented scale as we speak. Got the economy is just in a state of absolute chaos. We have wars breaking out everywhere. Massive earthquakes taking place. Mega climate change. And last I checked, these were all of the things we were told to keep an eye out for. All right, Matthew, back over to you. I hope you found that there Greek so we can just kind of put the nail in the coffin on this one, because I don't want to talk about this flat earth garbage ever again.
Yeah, I've got it. I was just sitting here waiting. What I was doing is I wanted to get the etymology dictionaries out and just, put the silver bullet in this. We're going to talk about this here in a minute, but all this is just elementary, actually. We need to get to the source code. Right here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yours is coming in clear. It was scrambled for a second. Let me throw it over to your screen now.
All right, so it's good now?
Yeah. Yep, it seems to be all right now. I'll have to just kind of float back and forth and let you know when it scrambles. I still have yet to figure out why it does that. But hey, we're on a budget, folks, and we don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. We'll go right here to the Wiktionary, of course. This is the best way to do it. You'll see what a gyro is, ladies and gentlemen. You'll see it right there, because I'm going to show it to you in the Bible source code. You'll take note that this is a gyros. Of course, this is in the dactive sense. But right here it is. You can see it. It's gyros, all right? And it means a turning, a circle spinning. Pretty easy to figure out where this is. We'll jump over here to the online etymology dictionary to make sure you understand a circle in a circular course. Ring. Okay? This is, of course, brought to bear, most specifically in Job, the 22nd chapter and verse 14. Pretty important that you can see what's going on here. I've got my search term right there. It is. You'll see that this one ends with the N. Of course, that's only because of tense, but that's where it is right there. That is a gyro. So when of course, we're using the Septuagint. We'll just swap over to Thompson here. A cloud is his covering so that it cannot be seen throughout he traverse the circuit of heaven, clearly pointing out to you he is referring to a gyro. When we float over there to the other one, the lesser of the two, of course, he does the same thing again. He refers to it as the circuit of the earth in the Septuagint because he uses the word gyro, referring to the earth as a gyro. Of course, when you look into the Hebrew, that's where everybody gets the idea of the circle of the earth. That's where it's used here, that Hebrew there, which that is what it means in Hebrew, just as a simplistic form of circle. However, as I just showed you in the Septuagint, the Greek was pretty clear. He told you a gyro. So just take note, ladies and gentlemen, this was thousands of years before anybody figured out that the planet Earth actually had a magnetic field and all that goes with that, the core, all that stuff. Yeah, it was in the Septuagint thousands of years before that. And just take note that it was in the Septuagint 1,000 years before it ever got into the Masoretic text, just so you know. But there you have both of those terminologies. So like I said, Brian, the only conclusion you can come to is this is a psychosis. This is a delusion, a self-induced delusion. Now, this is the type of thing that we're looking for when God tells us about a great deception. And of course, the reason for that, God gives it to us multiple times in the Bible. He says that people go so far that he hands them over to their lust and their desires. And they use those lusts driven along, of course, for this desire for which the Bible speaks about. You and I talked about that the other day. But it drives them down this path, and the Lord their God hands them over to these bad shepherds to be shepherded accordingly. So it's pretty serious. But literally speaking, ladies and gentlemen, there's some real fatherless, God-hating servants of Satan out there that even want you to believe that the heavens do not declare the Lord's glory. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not a screen or a dome up there. That's a movie. That's fiction. No. The Lord your God tells you that it is the heavens that declare his glory. They cannot ever stop facilitating that task. So literally speaking, you have to understand what you're up against, Brian. You are up against, even with the flicker rate of the videos, the tone, especially the tones within the voice, fluctuations there is off the charts. And then you go to their pages. Of course, they've been trained professionally in the TV and radio industry. So they know exactly what they're doing. But let me refer to them properly again. They are fatherless, God-hating servants of Satan that would actually try to convince the sheep that as they look up into the marvelous heavens, their courses have been set, of course, in place specifically for the bridal procession so that she might know the signs in her seasons, would actually dare say that they do not declare God's glory. They actually show the handiwork and technology of the moon men. That's what they're actually saying.
Well, there was a dangerous thread that I had my eye out for as well at the same time. And that was, I was just waiting for them to go into this realm, and lo and behold, they already had. Because I had my suspicions as well. Well, the next thing they're going to start bringing forward is we live in the Matrix. See, they've already actually embedded that within the course. So just look, folks, I don't...
Right, and that's
the effort that's going into this thing is literally ridiculous. I mean, come on. We've got so many things going on here right now. And folks, we need to keep our focus on the truth and on what we have taking place here. Right now, as we speak, people, you need to get focused back on the Bible, not looking for the humdinger of all conspiracies, the conspiracy of conspiracies. I mean, come on. You know, there are conspiratorial things that happen. Don't get me wrong on that. I'm not bashing everybody in the department, but some of this stuff, they have gone so far into left field, it is literally to the stage of just insanity. You know, the biggest crux, and we spoke about this on Iron Show the other night, and I stated it flat out. The trap that I've seen that's been laid, and this has worked itself into even the dominionist circles throughout the United States right now, is they've convinced people at this stage that God's no longer in charge. Once they've been able to convince people of that, things have escalated completely out of control. So just, you know, everybody remember some of the core, very simple things of the Bible when we're dealing with these things, okay? You know, we know through Daniel that God sets up leaders and kings for his purposes and in his times. Now, we may not like our kings and leaders that are set over us. Nonetheless, they're there for a purpose and for a reason, and each and every one of them that's here right now in this point in time, they're supposed to be where they're at. So let's just keep some of this stuff down to the core simplicity of it. Yeah, there's messed up stuff going on behind the scenes. I'm full well aware of all kinds of the varied odds and ends that are going on. Same time, I don't really like to focus on them too much. I like to see what's going on in the world picture, and I've obviously, once again, I'm spending a heck of a lot more time wrapped up in history. So I don't really have time to sidestep and look at some new deception that's going to run rampant. I am going to get a little ticked off about it because it's ridiculous, folks. It's really gotten to that stage. Some of this stuff that is being brought forward is borderline insanity. You know, and we'll go back here because, I mean, this is what I got to say about it. That's my look on it. I mean, seriously. Now, we're done with that. There's the monkey with the selfie, everybody. Best news of the week.
Amen to that, Brian. But, you know, we have to take this to bat. You mentioned something very important, okay? First and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, the dome being over you and you being in the Matrix, that's straight from the entertainment industry. That being said, why do they do that? Brian, there is a reason why that phrase was taught to me, that categorization of them. They are fatherless, God-hating, therefore they must serve Satan. You have to understand that they do this because they hate him. They most illicitly hate the simple fact that there is in fact going to be a great white throne judgment, and they will be taken to task. They hate that. They hate that simple fact that they cannot do whatever they want to do and ascend unto heaven. They absolutely hate that. And because of this, it drives them to a psychosis. And they're going to use this, of course. Who are they going to try to lure in, Brian? These folks are not masquerading as atheists, are they, Brian? Oh, no. They're not masquerading as Satanists, are they, Brian? No. Who are they masquerading as, Brian?
I've gotten so tired of even having to try to... I don't like associating that name with them. Okay? It's to the point we shouldn't have to have a changed name when it's the people that are... Here. Let me show everybody something. We've always said this before. Let me just go straight to the heart of the matter. Let me get over here to that. And quite simply. Very simply. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. We kind of put it as they will run around. All right, folks, you need to understand something here, and you need to get it quick, because I'm a little tired of all this rubbish floating around. You either, A, are going to fear the Lord your God, and that's going to lead to wisdom, or you're going to run around, quote unquote, running after knowledge.
That's right.
You know, they're going to run around all right, and they're going to run around like something when this whole kit and caboodle kicks off. So, come on, folks. Everybody get their heads on straight, and let's just Man, oh man, you see this kind of stuff that's going on, get the heck away from it. I don't know what else to say, folks.
Well, like I said, they're not masquerading as atheists, Brian. They're targeting who they hate the most. That's who they're going to target. That's what they're going to do. But you know, there's real things that need to be addressed and looked at. You know, you and I were talking. Maybe we ought to share some of those private conversations about the anomalous Isaiah chapter 45. Because there it says things that, well, you don't like it, Brian, and you're as a God-fearing, Bible-believing, gospel-preaching Christian, you just have to swallow it. What is said here about an individual, and you just made use, you know, of Nebuchadnezzar. You mentioned the world leaders, and God sets them up. No one has ever been set up like the individual whom God talks about himself. This is him speaking. This is God speaking in the first person. He is relaying this direct message about this individual. But it literally says things off the charts. It says things that have never been said about anyone else. Not ever. And I mean, you know, not Noah, not Enoch, not Abram, nor Abraham, not David, not Paul or Saul. It's absolutely amazing what is said there. And he gives it to you by a factor of 3. And of course, the verse that preceded it is just off the charts. But Brian, this, you know, strange anomaly that we have there in the scripture. And one thing that we have vast consternation about this individual, Brian, let's just talk about this publicly just for a minute. Now, I haven't mentioned any names. I've just talked about the chapter involved. But Brian, why don't you answer me? Riddle me this, Brian. I want to know. I'm going to take you to task. How did the individual with whom God is describing in Isaiah chapter 45, riddle me, how did he die?
The accounts, well, even as the infamous Wikipedia article brought up, and it's there. I have Herodotus here. I've spent a great deal of time in it. Nobody knows for certain how Cyrus died. And yet you had one of the greatest conquerors and, well, even, you know, fair kings. They go into great detail about how when he came, after he had conquered Babylon, how he came in and he rebuilt all their walls, you know, let them do what they needed, let them all keep their own religious beliefs, sent the Hebrew people home. You'd never really see too much negative written about him. He always went out of his way to, once he would conquer an area, then he'd go in and fix everything. Alexander the Great comes along, high amount of respect for the guy. Gets to his tomb and he goes, what in the world is going on here? And as our brother had pointed out earlier in the week, and I felt so goofy that I missed the rather obvious, the ones of Magog sort of let his tomb go into disarray, that they were sent there to guard. Okay, silence. Let's fill this.
Yeah, let's feel this. Sorry about that. I had myself muted. Um, you know, off the charts, Ryan. Off the charts. Why did Alexander get upset? It doesn't make any sense. Unless Alexander was thinking, of course, the obvious. He must have known that Cyrus had been set up even as he had been set up. That's the only logical conclusion that you can come to. The only one. And it's disturbing that people don't know that. But, you know, Brian, the absolute number one best way to make people think you're dead is to build yourself a tomb and then put the Magi there as guards. Don't you think that'd probably get it done?
Well, look. Okay, I brought this up. This came up in the Matthew did the riddle of the day. Let's not call them Magi anymore, guys. The ones there, they never were. If you look at the text even, and I linked it in, I've got several works here written from scholars in that area. They never were associated, even in the slightest, with what you would refer to as, for instance, at the beginning of the book of Daniel, when the Magers, the conjurers, and, the entire group of them are all brought in. Not anywhere in the Avestan texts are these folks referred to being of that order in the slightest. They were essentially like heads over governing positions and so forth. I mean, somebody get back to me and let me know where all these great astronomical works are that these guys have done, and all their quote-unquote things that would even qualify them to be listed as Magi. About all I've ever heard is, well, they bring up angels in their text, and they do this, that, and the other thing. Let me ask this. One of the key places that, breaking this down further, and I didn't even want to touch on this yet, but we might as well just hit a little bit of it. Now, there's a very specific group. I've talked about the Scythian at length, but luckily enough, I keep chasing this thread down even further to its, absoluteness, and there's really only a certain said group, and actually ties into two of them, but there is, they're referred to as the Shaka or Saka. There's a very specific one that the name translates to those with pointed hats. Now, in Kazakhstan, this is where they found what they call the infamous Golden Man. And it was a king that was found basically dressed in a set of armor, mixed between red pieces, buried pieces of gold on his armor, great big huge pointed hat. Now, there was somebody that had went in and took a video of one of the infamous Kurgan burial mounds. They're humongous burial mounds. And this spot in Kazakhstan where this person had went to and filmed, as you can see him moving the camera around, it is a humongous astronomical observatory. There's standing stones that are set in very specific placements throughout this as he's going around and filming this. Logic dictates that they were going to follow a quote-unquote star. Well, they would probably have to know something about astronomy. And yet we don't see that in these places where everybody's linked it to being the people of Iran. Folks, there's no evidence supporting that. There never was. It's just been repeated throughout the years, and we did not know better. Didn't have enough access to enough of their texts, enough of the archaeological findings earlier in history, so I can accept that. But as we roll forward and look at things deeper, realize on top of it, in the Greek, all you have to do is remove one letter and replace it with another one. I need somebody to explain some things to me here concerning Kazakhstan. And like I said, I was hoping not to have to even touch this tonight because I wanted to save all this till we actually get to the full-blown presentation here, but it's going to be a little bit more in depth. Ah, come on. See here, let's bring up Kazakhstan just for the tiny, at least get in here and show people the Wikipedia. And I need some people to explain something to me here because this doesn't make sense. Let me go over here now and get it over to Firefox. All right, you know, you got the little tidbits here in odds and ends and odds and ends. Go forward through. See right here, it's taken from the atypical nomadic Kaz to wander. And the Kazakh steppe was, you know, a very specific area within the steppes themselves. And it was also the same area that was inhabited by the Saka that wore the pointed hats. Now you can see again, got the Scythians right there in the equation. Kazakh Khanate. See, we got the traditional wedding dress. Look at the hat. Now let's go forward through. I gotta try stop doing that, guys. It's not that I'm angry at our listeners. It's just sometimes I'm angry about the fact that some of these things that have been sitting in broad daylight this whole time, you know, that I hadn't even myself realized. We did the program last week on Kingdom Divided Against Itself, and I noticed I came off as really angry in there. Folks, I'm more or less angry at myself for the fact that I did not see what was in broad daylight, and this was brought to my attention back when we began to look into the historical aspects of the Book of Esther, and I sidelined it and I didn't even consider it. The book Persian Fire, I believe it's Tom Holland that did that one up. He even pointed it out, and I got ticked off, and I didn't pay attention to what he was saying. It's a big mistake. Tend to kind of do that sometimes. If something doesn't line up with our preconceived notions on something, we tend to get a little mad, and that can really blind us from seeing something that's right in front of our eyes. Now take a look here. Right here, Kazakhstan, this is one of the major monuments that they have in Independence Republic Square, Almaty. Right here on the top, this is the Golden Man. Now, they've got the griffin type, what would you call that? Mythological being in there. That was something very common within the Saka and going into Siberia and so forth with their artwork. That's the one major way that they really saw how these people really stood out. You know, they'll refer to them sometimes as Indo-Scythian, you know. But the big thing that they always noticed with this group is, for one, you had the reindeer. You would bring in other varied animals as well within it. The griffin was part of this mythology. And, you know, the more they've looked at the archaeological findings, and as, you know, some of the scholars are coming forth right now, they're going, oh my gosh, these people, we had no idea the reality of who this group really was, let alone the massive impact and influence that they truthfully had on the entirety of the world. But this right here, you know, this is a depiction of the Golden Man right here in Independence Republic Square, Almaty. Go forward down a little bit more here. Once again, billboard. There's the Golden Man standing on same thing again. You know, look up here. You got this little lion with the wings. That's kind of cool, I have to say. Makes you wonder. Where else do we got it in here? I mean, we've got the geography of the area. But it's right here that really caught my attention. Kazakhstan has the largest and strongest performing economy in Central Asia. Supported by rising oil output and prices, Kazakhstan's economy grew at an average of 8% per year until 2013, before suffering a slowdown in 2014 to 2015. Once again, the further you go through this article, you'll find out that they are still sitting in a spot where they're not even being affected by what's happening here on the world economic stage. You have one man, you'll find out the further you go through this article, they have one person that's sitting over the top of their banks. They have not suffered. I mean, look, everybody, come on. What in the world is going on here with Kazakhstan? How is it that they're not being affected, even in the slightest, by any of what's happening on the world economic markets? It's baffling. I mean, it's just, oh my gosh. You know, and that's a big question I have right there. You have a fair amount of different religions taking place throughout here. You have Orthodox Christianity, Islam. Yeah, some different Muslim areas. Those odds and ends working into the equation here. And, you know, I'll just link it in, people. You can type in Kazakhstan, even if you're a bad speller like me. You can even misspell it, and it'll bring it up with search engines. So, just give me a moment here and bring back our favorite news story picture of the week.
Off the
Pull
chart.
that up here, everybody, so they can see the, it's him. That interesting. That's an all new one. So you guys are seeing this one here as I found it myself. This is the infamous Golden Man that I was just referring to. This is one of the Saka tribes, you know, associated with the Scythian. This is where some of this stuff gets a little bit confusing, because as far as in the term Scythian itself, there's been a little bit of confusion in understanding some of the things Herodotus was bringing forward, and some of the scholars have actually lumped in groups, the Mazengatis, the Samaritan, which were never part of the Scythian. So there's a lot of confusion that's come into the equation here with this. But nonetheless, this is this right here is what they refer to as the Golden Man. They've got him listed as a Sun Emperor here. And you've got various iconography. This is what I was talking about the gold worked standard type of art that they've referred to as the Indo-Scythian or Scythian artwork, which became really prevalent. The more they've, new archaeological findings, they're finding a whole lot more. We have the horse here. Let's see what else we have there. Once again, another piece of artwork looking something along the lines of a lion face. Again, another piece of this art. Got the wavy horns here. This is some inscriptions that were found here, and this kind of tells me that what I've suspected all along. It's not that they didn't have writing. Definitely along the lines of what we would refer to as a sort of runic script here for certain. Let's see, we have the Isaac inscription. Look at that. Rather interesting how they put that in a circle as they did. But this is one of the kurgans that was found here. So this is what, when I refer to the the Saka, specifically, it's a very specific group of them, and this is the group I've been tracing. I make a little offhanded comments referring to them as gnomes and so forth, but this is one of the most famous findings that they have had concerning the Scythian, as specifically speaking, the Saka themselves. back over to you, Matthew.
Absolutely amazing, man. Everything you just shared was absolutely amazing, dude. Off the charts, Bri. Absolutely off the charts. You bring so much.
Or not.
I've got my mic on. You don't have me? Brian, you don't have me? Bri. Well, I am here, Brian. Contrary to popular belief, I am here. But everything you just brought up, you just drive it home in such a way that, you know, I don't know. How can you debate with anything that you just said? Kind of hard to. So, at present moment, I'm not sure if I've got you or not.
Yeah, you do. We had some kind of strain. I don't know if you were talking or not there, or if there was just a set of silence. I mean, everybody, I'm having to use what I have as far as audio equipment here. So we're going to run into some glitches from time to time. And I don't know if you were talking previous. I was seeing stuff coming through that channel, but there was no sound coming out. So just hit the restart audio engine, and then a little bit later I heard you talking. So I mean, that's just it for those that are watching in the chat. If we start running into audio anomalies, if you can drop something in the chat, that would be hugely helpful, because I can't really keep a monitor on the other computer with the volume up at the same time while we're doing this here at all times. So,
all right, well, I was talking. I realized that you couldn't hear me, but I went ahead. No big deal to me. It's just off the charts, everything that you shared. I mean, you just, right in your face. I mean, you just showed everybody exactly what was going on. You know, what we're dealing with here. And I wondered if we was going to talk about people wandering around, by the way. Did you want to talk about that? Or did I lose you again?
no, I'm here. I'm just wondering which direction you're thinking here. We're talking along the lines of Isaiah 45, or where were we going with this?
Yeah, I was talking about Isaiah 45. I mean, well, now that you put a check on me, maybe I won't.
No, it's not anything in that matter. I'm sitting here looking for something else at the same time. Some, why didn't you get in there and I don't know why my Bible program, for some reason, it had a search. It's got the search from like a week ago. It didn't save the last whole batch of work we did that night. So maybe kind of call people's attention to that Greek word and look at a little bit of the Hebrew there to get everyone kind of on board here of what we're referring to, because
Well, let's do this. Right there in the Septuagint, when it refers to Cyrus there in Isaiah chapter 45, it talks about things there that, like I said, it catches you off guard. Where they're used for, well, let me just read it from the Thompsons. And I give thee treasures of darkness deep. It immediately brings to mind, of course, Psalms chapter 88, Brian, verse 6. They laid me in the lowest pit, in dark places, in the shade of death. I don't talk about one of my favorite prophetic books very often, but Lamentations chapter 3 and verse 6 backs it up. In dark mansions he placed me like the dead of old. And I could share a whole lot more than that. But just looking at the Greek words that he used there, and of course going into...
Why don't you throw in the word into your Skype there so people can see where you're at?
Okay, we can do that. I can see here. Right here's where we're at. Isaiah chapter 45, of course. This is using the Greco-Bible source code. We'll go right to the Septuagint. That's what we're looking at. And the Thompson and the Brenton are two translations of the Septuagint. Either will do, although they both need to be checked. It says right here, for darkness that you see here in the Brenton, and the Thompson does the same. It says darkness here. When you take this word in the Septuagint, of course, it's this word right here is what you're looking at. In reference to when we go over to, of course, Psalms 88, like I just said, it's right there. And you see what you can see what he's talking about this in reference to. That he has given Cyrus the knowledge of this thing. Of course, here it really stands out in stark contrast, of course, with Cyrus's tomb. And you'll take note, ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump back over here, and I didn't show this to Brian the other day. Oh, but that's all right. You'll take note, the Bible source code does something a little bit different. You'll take note here that it says anointed, right? You swap over to the original. What is that? Do you recognize that? That's Christ's name. That's Christ. So, encoded in here, of course, the Jews have always called Cyrus a type of Messiah. But when you take a look at these things, like I said, especially here in the Septuagint, thinking about Cyrus the Great's tomb and how Alexander the Great went off the deep end about it. But there's other encodations here. We could, I don't think I want to do that one. There's other encodations here, much like this one, of course. Very important what is said here. And it makes you immediately, ladies and gentlemen, once you get deep into the text, I hope that everybody realizes that the Jews themselves, they're named for the wandering Jew. If you don't know anything about that, you certainly need to look it up. But I've had 3 different rabbis tell me who that was. Bri? They said his name was Cyrus. Now, that just takes things a little off the charts, doesn't it, Brian? That ratchets the ante up when you realize.
Well, it's strange. I looked into that the other night, too, and I guess that story has been, like, changed, and I really couldn't get to the bottom of much more. It sounds like in the 1780s and so forth, a French portion of it got into the equation, and then other medieval writers, as they referred to them, added more and different odds and ends, and I really couldn't even get to the root of it. I noticed that there was one aspect of Ahasuerus. They say in there, one of them, while Christ was carrying the cross, this guy wouldn't do this, that, or the other thing, so he was cursed to wander the earth. And it's just, once again, it's one of those atypical things where it's like, I wish I could get to the root of this thing.
Yeah, that's kind of what it makes you, want to do. If you can't talk to a rabbi, of course, it will frustrate you because they'll just sit back and let the world fumble around in the dark. But switching back over here to the Bible, I wasn't going to do this, but I think I will. This word for dark here, of course, comes up in another place very important. Proverbs 1 verse 6. And we'll understand a proverb and a dark speech and the sayings of the wise. And yes, you're seeing that right. Parables. So, there is a whole lot more involved with this than anybody has hitherto realized. But when you tear apart those two chapters, Brian, I know that you did some poking around with Hebrew, right? What kind of conclusions did you come to when you poked around there in those verses with the Hebrew? Because I think you were looking for things that other people wouldn't quite know necessarily to go in that direction. So what surprises did you find when you looked at the Hebrew there?
You know, I'd be able to answer that a lot better if my program would have actually not, for some reason, held save for... Continue to talk here for a moment, and I'll pull it up manually here quick.
All right, not a problem. The many different times that this is talked about, ladies and gentlemen, I'll go ahead and share some more with you from the Greek. It also comes up in Jeremiah chapter 13 concerning future judgments. Give glory to the Lord your God before the darkness cometh, and before your feet stumble on the dark mountains. When you wait for light, the shadow of death will be there. And they shall be placed in darkness. You might want to take a look at that one too, ladies and gentlemen. Now, remember that the Greco-Bible source code is completely set up different than the Hebraic. So you might want to take note of that because the numbering system is different when you're looking in the Septuagint. Jeremiah is completely different. So it's pretty important that you be able to see what God's wanting you to see as far as the source code goes. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's a whole lot of information here concerning Cyrus. When you put together the Hebrew and the Greek, it'll lead you in places you never thought it would be. Certainly that is the case with me. But when you just take a precursory read of this, ladies and gentlemen, it's absolutely amazing what God says concerning Cyrus in the Greek and the Hebrew. It's just really off the charts what God's doing here. Thus saith the Lord God, for mine anointed for Cyrus, whose right hand hath taken hold of that nations may listen before him. I will break the power of kings, I will open gates before him, and cities shall not be shut up. I will go before thee and level mountains, I will break in pieces the gates of brass and burst asunder the bars of iron. And give thee treasures of darkness, deep hidden, unseen treasures I will disclose to thee, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord thy God, who calleth thee by thy name, am the God of Israel. Absolutely off the charts. You realize that God himself said that he would level mountains. Now, it's of course said of those that have enough faith, a mountain will move and cast itself into the sea. But you'll take note that for Cyrus, God himself would blast the mountain out of the way, make it level. It's absolutely off the charts what's encoded there. It was I who provided light and made darkness. Just everything there. Who who make peace and create evils. I am the Lord, and he who doth all these things. And it's pretty important that you take an itemization of what the Lord, your God, is talking about, and who he's talking about, Cyrus. So, this text, we could spend an extended amount of time talking about this text here and pointing everything out that you would need to see. But Cyrus is rather an enigma. Nobody knows how he died. And yet, a great mansion was built for his corpse, so to speak. But you'll take note that you should have seen that coming there in Lamentations chapter 3. So, Brian, are you back with us? Did you get your program running all right?
Nope.
All right. Well,
For some reason, it's playing games here. It won't give me the proper
No,
word.
it's-
Nothing. My whole search. Every time I'm.
no, you're
Never mind.
wrong. You're wrong. It's not playing games with you. God's just telling us that. Okay? We've gone far enough. So let's wrap this one up, shall we? No big deal. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that the God haters are just dying to get their information on that Brian stumbled across. And it really is off the charts when you actually believe what the Lord your God has said. And look there into the Hebrew, Isaiah chapter 45. Because if you don't have eyes that can see, I don't have to worry about it. You're not going to be able to see it. So it would seem that the Lord our God has put the kibosh on Brian sharing anything about that Hebrew. Because he had some things to share that was really off the charts, by the way, but we'll put that in our back pocket, is what we'll do. The important...
Well, honestly, I think that it deserves an entire program all in of itself. Because, and it's going to have to come after we get done with the infamous Sokka with the pointy hats. Because then, look, folks, Matthew sent me that word. I decided to throw it into the Google search engine. What I found next, I just went, you got to be kidding me. In context of everything I've found out concerning and tracing this path of the Magi, the whole thing is it didn't surprise me in the slightest. Matter of fact, I should have seen it coming. Wasn't really a shock. But it is. And people, yeah, you're probably going to be a shock to you if you've never heard about this either. It's rather amazing.
which is going to force us into the fringe bride. It's going to force us to talk about things publicly that we've, well,
Well, inadvertently in a way, yes, but at the same time, this is like even, I kind of caught everybody's attention last week when we talked about Mr. Gamuda Shakyamuni, about his quote-unquote Sokka, and they put that blanket term Scythian roots into the equation. Well, either or, it's kind of doesn't matter. Nonetheless, there's been a real misunderstanding as history has went along as to what the realities behind how Mr. Gamuda, what he was saying and what he was teaching, as opposed to what Buddhism has turned into over the course of time. And I think once we begin to point out those factors, well, people are going to kind of start scratching their heads, and they're probably going to think we've really lost it. Historical documents stand behind what I'm saying. There's one that is known as the Greek Buddha, and his name is Pyrrho. He was there at the time of Alexander the Great. It's in the historical records. He went and spent time with these people, and he was able to pass along the teachings that he was following from the early passed on by word. So, and we also had, when you go from what they call the Middle Chinese language, but if you take it back to the previous version of it, the scholar that's done the work on this also he shows you that the foundings of Taoism came from one and the same source. And the word literally, I believe it's Lao Tzu, literally translates to Gamuda in that earlier form of Chinese. So we have all thought that religious belief system, obviously seeing how it is today, we see it kind of in that form. But when you go back to the root of it and the heart of it, it's altogether something different. And one of the famous theologians early on, around 300 AD, Eusebius, actually quoted work from him in his work, The Preparation for the Gospel. So he recognized how important these root teachings actually were, leading people's minds in the direction, coming up to the birth of Christ. So there's a lot here, a lot more than I ever expected, and I ignored it for so long. I kept seeing this whole trail of somehow Buddha keeps working into the mix here. What's going on with it? I tried to ignore it. I tried to push it aside because of my preconceived understandings of how all this worked, and guess what? Sometimes that can get us into a problematic area. Luckily, once again, as I've said so many times, we've got a lot of scholars coming to bat right now that are really just releasing some monumental works at this stage in time. Barry Cunliffe has always been one of my favorite. I think he's been knighted on top of it. I think I saw him referred to as Sir Barry Cunliffe. But he's standout, excellent archaeologist, historian that I've paid attention to a lot of his work over time. And he just, in September, released a 500-page whopper of a book on this entire portion of history concerning the steppes, the plains, like Matthew brought up, the wanderers. He brought in this whole thing, so I've got a darn monkey. He's just going to keep showing up. Good grief. But yeah, as I said, Barry, he's done some standout work, and it's really kind of interesting when you sit down, and he stated flat out that people did not even know the ramifications of this group of people, especially within, the Saka, where you got them through the Kazakh Plain, you've got the other group coming up into Siberia through the Altai Mountains. And this is kind of around the same area where the Mongols inhabited as well with the Khans, and we've talked about that already in the Flail of God. So it's now coming to a lot of historians' attention, and they're finally starting to figure out, a lot of people try to use some kind of mystical metaphor to explain how in the world all these close-knit connections, how these philosophies were able to go from one part of the world to the next, how these things kept, having these similarities. And, they've tried to rationalize it out, like some people from the Eastern thought forms like, well, it was a magical chi that went along. Now what they're finding, though, through the extensive work that has been done just within the last, 14 to 15 years, they're now realizing that there's always been a close connection back and forth through that entire continent, going from the western portions over to the eastern portions. Philosophies had to go through a middleman, and they realized that middleman was these steppes, these plains, these nomads, these wanderers. It's more interesting on top of when you find out that the archaeologists have began to realize that your first portions of the domestication of horses and riding and all of that actually came from this area within the Kazakh Plains. In the Kazakh steppes, you had the same situation happen with metallurgy, working of bronze, and keep finding out that all these major things for some reason keep tracing themselves back to this region in the world. And it's really, when you step back and look at it, it is quite literally mind-blowing. And it's amazing things that have went on there, and it's amazing now that a lot of work is being done by archaeologists and historians that are really bringing this forward. This goes as far as even these connections that you can quite clearly see with things that have happened here in the Americas, with South America, and all it takes is pulling up a globe for 2 seconds, and you can pop that furthest eastern tip right over to the end of Russia. And you can just literally realize that it was a hop, skip, and a jump. They could just jump pretty much right over to the tip of Alaska. Jump on a log if they wanted to and float across, for crying out loud. So it's really monumental that this all is surfacing right now at this point in history. And it's just, I don't know, the fascination that I've had just looking through all this is just unbelievable. And now, when we look at the story, look at what we're told in the Bible about these wise men coming from the east, and then all of a sudden now we're beginning to actually fill in the blanks with the reality of the backstory here, who it is that they actually were, and then you kind of tumble it forward to what Matthew was just bringing up. Osiris and the invisible places is the way one of them is put. And when you stumble into what I had to look at the other night, just from that Greek word, throwing it into the search engine, brings this into stark clarity. We've talked about this before. Matthew and I have kind of pondered this in the background. Well, are the Magi going to be an important factor in the days to come? When you begin to search out this Greek and those Hebrew words, you're going to find out, yeah, and they're there at every step. It shows up in multiple places, even leading up to that day of he who sitteth upon the throne. Great earthquake. They're always showing up there. Not in a bad connotation, but I'll tell you this right now, folks, you probably wouldn't want to come face to face with one of these guys. That's all there is to it. They'll be kind to you. I know that right now. Man, oh man, they definitely are quite a amazing thing in the world as we speak. I'd have to say, Matthew, a very rare, anomalous circumstance. Slide it back over to our favorite news story of the week. So where to you again, Matthew?
Is that classic or what, man? That is just us, dude.
Yeah, my wife is, she's been getting on me because I keep bringing it up all throughout the week. Because, I looked at the backstory today. Come on, folks, this is good stuff. This is back in 2011. This monkey got a hold of this guy's camera. And literally, this monkey is smiling for Pete's sakes, and he takes a picture of himself. Come on. No, if that ain't news. But the guy that owns the photo now has been taking this into court, trying to get copyrights for it, and now they've released basically a statement. Well, it's not allowed to be copyrighted because the monkey. Sure, and at the end of the day, I find it even more entertaining is just the whole concept of that monkey actually trying to come into court and sue for his copyright. But there's people actually fighting for this monkey, which at least every now and then we get these little news stories that we can kind of sit back and just go, that's good stuff. But a monkey doing that's it's straight up classic. He posed for it and he took the picture. That's good stuff.
Yep, that is just good stuff, man. That's good stuff right there. Yeah, Bri, we got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of important stuff to cover. And we don't really, we really shouldn't be getting upset or mad about, these sheep being lured out of the Lord's sheepfold with these deceptions.
Well, I've said this time and time again, and I've tried to point this out to folks in our, the little social network gatherings and so forth. Everybody's got a choice to make, folks. I can't steer in the right direction. People have to choose their course on their own. We can teach. That's what we're doing. We're bringing forward the truth. It's up to others to make their choices into which direction they're going to go. Now, as things always work, God's going to wake people up and remove them from these situations. In the meantime, we just have to keep doing what we're doing. I can't stand having to come in and dismantle this insanity that floats around when it's just 1,000 times easier. I waste a lot less breath just speaking the truth. This is what we really have to do at the end of the day, and even keeping it to its simplest thing, you know. Bless those that curse us. Love our neighbors. Treat our enemies well. Do what's right. Bottom line, that turns things around in so many ways, and we've sat back and we've literally been watching a series of events that have been transpiring over a bit of a course of time here, and just by doing what we're supposed to do, we're watching some actually positive results happening in the meantime as well. So, do these deceptions tick me off? You don't want to hear me when I'm not on air when I come across this stuff. Oh yeah, they tick me off. But they are what they are. You know, folks, we knew this was all coming. They have their role to play. We have our jobs to do.
Yeah, we do. We got our jobs to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, sorry we spent some time talking about those deceptions, but at least we just
never really anything. More or less to point out a few news stories, have a chit chat about a few odds and ends. This is nothing overly pre-planned or fancy, but it's just we've had programs like this in the past. You just have to do them sometimes.
Yep, you just have to sit back and do them sometimes. That's a fact. But it's good to get together with everybody, and let's just get this out there. Hope you enjoyed the broadcast, that's for sure. I hope you enjoyed our new mascot. And hey, man, why use a belt? Keep your shorts on with the bands of time. That is classic. I don't know why that came to me. It just, bam, came to me. But ladies and gentlemen, we're headed, obviously, just the very short news articles that Brian and I covered tonight. We're going places we haven't ever been before. I proved that to you emphatically. Brian proved that to you emphatically. We've got new earthquake capitals. We've got the worst starts in the financial markets. This is going to ratchet up. We've got deluge from the skies. You need to prepare yourself for these deceptions that are coming your way. If you want to know what's important, just follow either my social networking site or Brian's. And I'm going to be honest with you. I keep it tight over there for a reason. I keep it very tight. I allow a couple of new people in via the other members. They have to send me, people that send me a friend request, they're not going to go anywhere. I always get the group that we already have in the Ecclesia. They will send me a suggestion or mention, and that's when I bring them in, brand new. So we keep it pretty tight over there, but if you want to know what's important, just go there. That's me and Brian's going to be talking about what is to come. We're going to be talking about how that directly ties into exactly what the Lord our God has told us. That ties directly into what has been. And that's just the way of it. And take note, I was listening to one of those, as long as I could stomach the cadence of his voice. Couldn't take it at all. He couldn't even come up with the proper term for it. I found that pretty classic. It's isochronal eschatology, and I wrote a dissertation on it, of course, in 1989. Just pulled it out of the attic the other day. So, hey, if you want the truth, keep your eyes sharp. Keep your ears wide open. There's going to be all kinds of distractions out there. The bride must make herself ready. It says that clear. It's up to you. You can be in the bridal procession or not. You can have oil in your lamps or not. And the Bible source code tells you very clearly where you're supposed to purchase that oil from. I know that Brian and I have never talked about that publicly, where exactly you're supposed to be, who, what, where, when, why. But of course, there is a particular group and a particular reason as to how you purchase your oil for your lamp. But that's way on the back burner. Me and Brian's got to get to the bottom of these magi from the east. We've got to cover Cyrus. We've got to cover the image of the beast. We need to talk about a whole lot of fringe topics. We're going to have to talk about the moon men and what they are. We need to talk about what the Bible says as to whether angels are going to come down and rape people. So we've got all kinds of fringe things that we need to talk about, but all those things are on the back burner. You probably realize it's pretty important. You're probably going to send me all kinds of messages, angry, because you want to know how to purchase that oil, right? Well, hang out in the ecclesia, and I'm sure you'll get that oil in your lamp. But that's going to be on the backest burner of them all.
Well, and let me point this out, too. You know, we've had something happen in the last week that has just been absolutely amazing. There's another project that I've kind of initiated more so. We've got, over the Boys of the Portico Solomon with you. I really want to get to the table and come in with all of us, thanks to something Jose came across. He noticed in there the stuff that I should have noticed immediately. And that text concerning the Avesta and what happened there with the Zoroastrians at the time of the switch to the new Achaemenid Empire. You know, and I kind of pointed this out. You remove one letter off of the Greek for magi and replace it with another one. Well, he kind of blindsided me with it, and it should have caught my attention immediately. So our brothers and our sisters have been up to some amazing things here in the background lately through studying the Bible. I got blindsided with another thing this week. You know, we've also got a project that we're the infamous Isaiah 47 and the daughter of the Chaldees.
Oh my goodness, I forgot that, Brian.
Oh, that one's, and I'd actually like to cover that before we get to the Magi, because people, you're going to understand a little deeper of a pattern here of something we've noticed quite a bit along the ways here. You know, we see, biblically speaking, a lot of the times, you know, we just see what's going on with the men that are in the picture, and we do have a lot of important women also. You know, but this is another topic that we're now beginning to see a lot of clarity on, is how certain things were kept alive through varied kingdoms, and when certain women were made queen mothers, so to say. I've noticed, you know, there's verses that bring that up. That one alone is going to be enough to blow everybody away. What happened this week on top of it, as the girls were doing their study on all this, went into Revelation, they blindsided me when they brought something in, and when I found what I did, I went, you have got to be joking. because it's going to take you to one of the most absolute strange places you never would have expected. Had suspicions all along that the Assyrian had definitely had something to do with an earlier portion of the Indus civilization settlement. Well, by all appearances, he took it a bit of a step further, and I did not see this coming. Concerning this daughter of the Chaldees, rather ironic because the texts that I was finding that are through the actual, I've got here, it's the text of the ancient East. Let me look here. Quick, what is the term of this one? Yep. And it's going to go blurry. The Ancient Near East, James B. Pritchard. It's got the text right in here, and this thing is, it's a gold mine. And there's stuff in that text alone that should have caught people's attention a long time ago, as she even details giving up to the 68-year mark within the timeline of Daniel, 2 years before, after knowing what time it was from reading the book of Jeremiah, he begins to pray. She details it all. She was there the entire way through the whole thing, and it's just amazing.
I think you've shared enough there. I will throw this out. That was just supposed to keep Brian and I out of drama. I just mentioned it to him, but take note what he said. You need to understand that our sisters in the Ecclesia had no idea. Now, they had no idea. Now, I don't know why I just randomly come up with a chapter for the Brian and I to keep us out of drama. I mean, that's what I've been trained to do by men that were by far better than me. When you know drama's coming up, hit a Bible topic, do a study. Get into the Bible source code, see what you can see. And I just threw this out, the daughter of the Chaldeans, to make sure Brian and I didn't get emotionally tied up in a distraction. It was used as a protective measure. Brian, our sisters in Ecclesia had no idea what you were looking at. And they come up with this locative, as you say, and all of a sudden, boom, the 4th of July goes off. So, ladies and gentlemen, we got important things. The Brian and I have important things to do. And I'm just going to tell you this right now. This is going to come in cycles, okay? It's going to come in cycles. They are going to try to pull us in to their little groups. Then they'll attack us. When that doesn't work, they'll try to pull us into more groups. That won't work. They'll get tired of that. So they'll try attacking us. This is going to go through a cycle. It's going to start right now. Now, the ones that attack us, just ping it. I already knew it was coming. Just don't worry about it. It's no big deal. The most important thing is that the bridal procession, that is the majority of Brian and I's family, is not in the United States. They have their way, and of course, Brian stumbled onto it the other day. He was asking me about servers being in this country and that country. You're not going to touch them. They're using. A lot of times they will own their own businesses, and they'll have their business server there at their, at their shop or whatever, and that's where the private group is. So I don't have to worry about, 95% of the people in Brian and I's family, we don't have to worry about. You're not these American crusaders aren't going to be able to touch them. So just take note. Those in the American bridal procession, keep your eyes sharp. You'll know them. They can't help themselves. They cannot help themselves. You will know them by what they do, the fruit that they bear. So keep that in mind.
Bingo.
And ladies and gentlemen, the Brian just saved me last night. There is a skeleton in the closet. Let's put it that way. I wanted to address the issue, and Brian reminded me, Matthew, we don't do that. It's not what we do. You have to remember that Judas was a disciple. And it's a terrible thing to think that John the Baptist wasn't a disciple. But he wasn't, was he? No, 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 no. Judas was chosen to fill that last slot, wasn't he? So we have to take that to heart, and it's a good thing that Brian reminded me of that. So keep your eyes sharp, your ears clear. Just remember what I said. This is going to come in cycles because they will get exasperated that one thing's not working, so they'll try the other one, and they'll just go back from left to right to left to right to left to right. That's what they're going to do. So I already see it coming. And Brian and I was talking about having guests on and doing this and doing that. You know what? Don't need to. You can look, of course. Brian and I was talking tonight about having Michael Basham on the video. Just have him on for good measure. He's wanting to leave where he's at now and go to a different place. He's got a burden on his heart to relocate, not back to the United States, take note. But we'll probably just ask Michael what he wants to talk about. Bring him on and just have a bash.
Well, I mean, let me point out, too, I mean, I've spent a great deal of time looking over a bunch of his videos now. Some of the coolest videos I've seen out there for a long time. I really enjoy what it is that he's doing right now. It is so important.
And what he intends to do. I'm not sure why the Lord is tugging at his heart to relocate. You know, that's not an easy thing to do. But he's dead set. And Michael really don't care what other people think. He does things as the Lord draws him. That's what he does. He does off the charts things in the classroom. He don't care. He don't care. He wants to follow in the footsteps of the Lord his God. So Brian and I will put ourselves at his disposal. I don't care what he wants to talk about. Really doesn't matter to me. He likes conspiracy theories a lot, and he talks about the Lum Nutty. He loves the Lum Nutty. So we might talk about them. You know what? It is well with the Brian. Whatever he wants to do, we'll cover. Maybe some of the things that we talked about here tonight. I'm sure that Michael would like to cover some of that stuff because it's pretty conspiratorial. And,
yeah, and it's as I pointed out too. It's not that quote unquote all things that are called conspiracies are in left field. There's a lot of validation between a lot of the things that are going on. I know. Look, I studied that stuff for going on probably 3 to 4 years. I know what's what. I know the whack stuff too. So there are things going on. There's things going on behind the scenes. Turkey took it to the forefront and center when they brought forward the quote-unquote deep state. Okay, folks? Yes, this stuff is real. There's things going on that are not good. There have been for a long time. We don't talk about that stuff too much, but there's certain aspects when we see them, we kind of have to shout about them. We touched on this lightly. There were some things that went on earlier in the year concerning cloud servers that went down. It was important. A lot of the places that were hit repeatedly was China. And a lot of things are being brought forward right now that China has sort of caught this stuff in a place where it's kind of bringing the economy into more of an escalation of kind of a free fall, spin out of control.
Exactamundo. And remember, Brian, we were saying that 5 years ago. I was telling everybody, ladies and gentlemen, mechanically it has to work different because it's not 1929. It's a global stock market. When it crashes, it's all coming down. It's going to come all crashing down.
Well, yeah, and we just had the Ukraine default in the last week or two here on top of it. So now Russia's going into some sort of world court suing them. I mean, we've had outbursts of massive protesting going on in Greece. Things have not been going well there. I mean, there's just so many things going on right now, and we cannot stay on top of all this. It's impossible. There's so many things. I mean, at the end of the day, going to what Matthew was pointing out earlier, I mean, I stated this on the Iron Show earlier this week. You know, there's a lot of a core tendency of people to kind of, well, their doctrine's a little bit off in this direction, and these little tiny things are wrong here, and blah, blah, blah. Folks, that's not the stuff that matters. It's a term I used to love in music when we would do songwriting. It was called KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Why? For things that are important, you're going to know who's who because of the fruit, what comes out of their heart. Now, if they believe little tidbits here or there, it's all irrelevant, folks. Okay, full-blown deceptions, okay, you're going to know them. How? You'll know them by their fruit as well. How are you going to stay from getting blindsided in the midst of all this? Hey, everybody, here in America, you can still walk down to the dollar store and pick up a Bible off the shelf. Get in there and start reading it. It's way harder to get deceived if you're sitting down and reading it for yourself. For those of you that like to go out there and listen to varied podcasts, watch different programs, be it via YouTube or, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's coming through the TV now. That stuff's not allowed in my house. My wife knows better, but that's irrelevant. Point being is if you sit down and watch this stuff, you need to make sure that you go in and check everything that's being taught. And we've said this time and time again with everything we've brought forward. We want everybody to get in there. We want them to dig. Want them to check everything. That happens, then you start seeing the fruit produced that I saw go in a wildfire explosion in this last week alone, where I had our guys on one side bring something to the table that I quite clearly missed and was blown away by. The other side, we had the women's study group. They brought something to the table. This is what we need. Okay? More people studying the Bible, more people digging deeper. And even on top of it, even if you're just getting to the core straight English and getting that into you, that's what's important here at this stage of the game. Now, the deceptions are going to do what they do. We're going to know who is who. It's quite simple to see. We're going to see things, they're going to flare up here. And earlier, at a point, somebody drew a line in the sand. Yeah, there may be some ricochet and some fire from it, but at the end of the day, it just gets to the point where it's like, enough's enough. You don't want nothing to do with this. Draw that line. We're going to stick to the truth. Everybody else, same thing. Get in there, read it. Let it affect you. Heart. Do what's right. And I guess going straight back to it again, keep it simple, stupid. Not an insult towards everybody else. It's just when it comes to music and songwriting, musicians, we can get kind of complicated. Then it ends up turning it into a mess. It's a reason that statement's used.
Amen. Amen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a good one. I have appreciated it. I hope you've enjoyed the time. I hope you use the information that's been presented unto you. We're breaking records. None of this is normal. I mean, this year has started out with a shout. So, I think that's enough for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, God bless. Godspeed. And why use a belt? Keep your shorts on with the bands of time, baby.